So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy Ellen. I'm back with some more conspiracy theories and unexplained mysteries. But before we get to all that craziness, I need your help to unplug some more people out of the Matrix. How do you do that? Hit that like button for me real quick, and then in the comment section put hashtag unplug. That's it, all right? And if you're new, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, join the family, and join us in watching some of this craziness. Let's check it out.
Park rangers are some of the toughest people out there, but even so, that doesn't mean they don't come across their fair share of stuff that sends them running for the hills. Welcome back everyone, my name is Kennedy, and today we are going to be counting down some of Reddit's most terrifying discoveries found in the wilderness. So grab those hiking shoes and get ready, because these are the top 10 scary discoveries made by park rangers. Starting us off in our number 10 spot, we have animal corpses. So there are certain things you expect to find in the wilderness, and to be honest, one of the more likely things is dead animals. But not in the way that Ripe OTCDXVI found them. Quote, I'm a ranger at Yellowstone. A couple weeks ago, I was exploring the Lamar Valley, about 11 miles from the nearest road, and even further to the park boundary. There, in the middle of the trail, is a perfectly severed deer head. No blood, no raggedness at the severance. Perfectly intact. This is weird because I have seen wolf and bear spoils, and I used to find cougar prey remains with radio tracking just after the cougar made them, but this was not any of those things. The head was completely uneaten. Eyes, tongue, everything intact. Even the ravens hadn't touched it yet. No catching, no droppings, right smack in the trail. But again, no blood. Even a human doing it made no convention.
I think that's the part that's getting to me. No blood. Please explain how that happens.
Sense. It was just a doe, so it had no antlers, plus why leave it in the trail? It was just strange and creepy top to bottom. Coming in at number 9. A midnight pee. This next one is scary in the way that it could have been a literal life or death situation, but thankfully it's just a crazy story that Shiny_Brine gets to share with all of us now. Quote, my scariest wilderness encounter was at about 2 a.m. while maintaining a fire line on a 300-acre fire caused by a lightning strike. I needed to take a pee, and the rule is you don't urinate on fire, so I walked over towards a stump outside the fire line. I was about 50 feet away from the stump when it walked away. It was a black bear. I can only imagine the feeling in the pit of Reddit users' stomach when they realized what was going on, and thank God the bear didn't think or want to attack them. I wonder if they ever peed in the woods at night after that incident. Next up at number 8.
Can you imagine? Oh man, you're at your most vulnerable state at that point. What can you do? You just praying and hoping he just finds something else better to eat than you. Yeah.
An abandoned tent. Next up is a story from Redditor Not So Single Buck, and while it might not sound as disturbing as some of the others on this list, I think stumbling across any kind of abandoned living situation can be a little unnerving. Quote, the oddest thing was the abandoned camp next to the trail. I was surprised as all get out to walk around the corner one day and find a tent set up directly next to the trail. The trail ran along a nice stream and was a very tranquil spot. Inside I found a cloth, sleeping bag, some dirty clothes, lots of food, and a teddy bear. Everything reeked of cigarette smoke. I was reluctant to confiscate everything and leave the individual out there with nothing, but I did take all the food and pack it to a secure food storage box along the way back to my cabin. I left a note explaining where I had taken the food and that they needed to move camp. The Reddit user then explains they left it for about 2 weeks, but when they returned it, it was like no one had ever been there since. It was as if it was completely untouched. Also, I have to say the mixture of a teddy bear and it reeking of cigarette smoke makes you wonder who was there in the first place. Next up at number 6.
And see, that's why I don't randomly just go strolling through the woods. That type of stuff, you could roll up on somebody, and me personally, I always think it's somebody on the run. Somebody that police are looking for, and you know what I mean? Yeah, that'd be my luck.
7. A shed. Similarly to our last point, while sheds aren't inherently creepy in theory, anything abandoned in the middle of the woods is never a super great thing to come across as a general rule of thumb. Or at least in the case of one former Reddit user who posted saying the most disturbing thing they ever discovered on the job as a park ranger was, quote, a shed behind an abandoned house with a steel reinforced door broken off the hinges. The windows of the shed were boarded up from the outside. The only thing inside the shed was a queen-size bed with shredded, partly singed, white sheets. I mean, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a starter kit for a kidnapping and killing sort of situation. No? Coming in at number 6. A weird man. This next story about a bone-chilling discovery comes from Redditor Senor Puffy Pants, and they start off by explaining that they were in charge of leading a group of middle schoolers and their instructor up to the top of Mount Sterling in North Carolina. However, the first night they saw something that made them question their sanity. Quote, everything around me was rather bright from the moon and from the position I was in. I could see down the trail we hiked to get to the top. I laid there enjoying the scenery and noticed something moving on the trail. Bears are common in the area, so I perked up. As it got closer, I could tell it was a person. We were in the middle of nowhere and there was someone hiking up the trail with no headlamp or any gear. I was just frozen watching this person move closer to our camp. They arrived at the top of the mountain where we were and just stopped. I watched as what appeared to be a man surveyed our camp. He stood there for what seemed like 30 minutes staring at our camp. I had no idea what to do. I waited just staring at the man while he stared at my camp. In the end—
What do you mean you have no idea what to do? I think it's just shocking to me to the amount of people who go hiking up trails and stuff, but have no way to protect themselves or have no plan of action just in case something goes wrong or something like this happens. What do you mean you don't know what to do? You should figure this out before you start hiking this trail, buddy.
And Reddit friend said around 3:30 he stood up and went back down the trail he came from, but that he practically couldn't sleep the rest of the trip. Coming in at number 5, the haunted site. This next scary park ranger discovery comes from user The Reluctant Ranger, and they start off by stating that they are a desert park ranger. Quote, volunteers at one of my parks called us to report a still smoldering / smoking car in one of our remote campsites. It was normal for stolen cars to get abandoned and burned. We went to look, gawked for a couple minutes while waiting for the fire department. After a couple minutes standing there, it became very apparent there was a body in the front seat. After an additional look around, food wrappers, rope, and numerous other strange items were found. It seems like whoever was in the front seat had been bound and shot. Police came and cleaned it up, but didn't find any answers. We refer to that as the haunted site now. It is the most popular in that tiny little park. Coming in at number 4, a stalking cougar. If you grew up near the woods like I did, then you were also probably told on a daily basis to watch out for cougars. And so this next one from Smokey the Marshmallow—
Yeah, but I don't think we're talking about the same type of cougar I was taught to watch out for. Mine aren't necessarily found in the woods either, you know what I mean? They could be at your local grocery store, they could be at your— let's just keep going, my bad. Back to the cougar.
Daily basis to watch out for cougars. And so this next one from Smokey the Marshmallow feels especially terrifying to me. Quote, the scariest experience I had as a backcountry park ranger in Washington state was being stalked by a cougar for a day and a half. I was hiking up an unpopular trail up to an old shelter and had that creepy being watched feeling. I had seen fairly fresh cougar scratches and droppings along the trail, but that's pretty common up here, so I wasn't worried at all. That night I camped at the shelter, which only had 3 walls and a roof. I felt uneasy all night and hardly slept. At one point I arranged my emergency foil tarp around my sleeping bag so at least I could hopefully hear something if it approached me as I slept. The next day I found fresh droppings and scratches on the trail I had hiked in on. About a mile past the shelter, I found a mostly eaten deer in some dense brush off the trail. Cougars often keep deceased prey stashes throughout their territory for later snacking. Now, a cougar won't usually tangle with a human, but here I am, a 5'3" 5-foot-tall, 100-pound sack of flesh and bones at least 13 miles out from any other humans. I decided to cut short my 3-day trip and hot-footed it out there. The last 2 hours of hiking through dusk in a dense forest was the most hair-raising hike I've ever had. I didn't know I was even capable of being that hyper-vigilant. Next up at number 3 is a disturbing camp. Next up is a story from Reddit user Genesis Pro Tech, who discovered a situation while they were looking for missing teens that would have made me worry for everyone's life involved. Quote, I head out in the general direction the teens had set off in. We'd been hiking for most of the day and seen nothing. We're about 35 kilometers into the woods at this point when we start noticing odd things. Sticks carved like spears stuck into the ground, weird carvings in the trees, a stuffed animal hanging from a noose up in a tree. This place was nowhere near any roads. It wasn't on the regular trails people would go on in the area. The really eerie thing was that everything was freshly carved. Somebody had been there within a couple of hours of us and made these things. Mind you, we're still looking for these teens. From there they say that while creeped out, they continued with the hike until they reached a place to camp overnight. However, the next morning, when they woke up, Reddit user says, quote, I noticed a bit of shirt that had caught on a small tree and ripped along with some shoe prints. We were thinking, great, maybe we're close to the teens, when a radio call comes through saying that they had just been found 20 kilometers east of us. All those weird things we had seen from the day before came flooding back into my mind, and we wasted no time hiking out of those woods. Coming in at number 2. Human teeth. This next story comes from Reddit user The Copy Paste Life and only gets creepier the more you find out about it. Quote, our park lets kids from school in so they can look for animals in the forest and the streams. One day, a kid finds molars. The teeth looked like human molars, but the teacher said they were deer's. I dismissed it and completely forgot about it. But 2 days later, they found a corpse with a smashed skull and jaw in another part of the park, and all its teeth were missing. I mean, first of all, how long was that corpse there? Secondly, did they ever find out who this person was? I mean, I would not be too keen on coming to work after finding that, and having no clue how it ended up there is all I'm saying. And last up in our number 1 spot is a man. As much as this would be a very scary thing to come across in a forest, it would also be very depressing and incredibly traumatic. According to Reddit user Rogue Leader 096, the worst, most unsettling discovery they ever made on the job was a dead man who had tragically taken his own life. Quote, I am a
Been there, done that. I've actually found a dead body in the woods before, at work. So yeah, ain't one of the best feelings in the world at all.
Seasonal ranger for my local forest district. The rest of the rangers say we find about 1 victim a year, and when we go around opening parks each day, we drive through to make sure everything is okay. In this instance, I was driving through and had just lost sight of the road when I saw a man. Reddit friend then goes on to describe that the man was in the trees and that he knew immediately what he had discovered. Quote, I called the cops, but the medical examiner took an hour or so to show up, and he was the only one with a ladder long enough to cut the guy down. So I stared at him, waiting for an hour. I mean, it's just straight up awful.
So all of a sudden AI is everywhere. People who weren't quite sure what it was are playing with it on their phones. Is that good or bad?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about AI for a long time, since I was in college, really. It was one of the things that, the sort of 4 or 5 things I thought would really affect the future dramatically. It is fundamentally profound in that the smartest creatures, as far as you know, on this earth are humans, is our defining characteristic.
Yes.
We're obviously weaker than, say, chimpanzees, and less agile, but real smarter. So now what happens when something vastly smarter than the smartest person comes along in silicon form? It's very difficult.
It means we're no longer at the top of the food chain, bruh.
To predict what will happen in that circumstance. It's called the singularity. It's, it's a singularity like a black hole, because you don't know what happens after that. It's hard to predict. So I think we should be cautious with AI, and I think there should be some government oversight, because it affects it's a danger to the public. And so when you have things that are a danger to the public, like let's say, so food and drugs. That's why we have the Food and Drug Administration and the Federal Aviation Administration, the FCC. We have these agencies to oversee things that affect the public, where there could be public harm, and you don't want companies cutting corners on safety, and then having people suffer as a result. So,
why does it take Elon saying this when a lot of us and a lot of people have been screaming this from the top of the mountain for so long? What is it? Does it take just Elon to say it for people to start perk their ears, starting to listen? And I don't mean the people, us. I'm talking about government and things like that. Like, why does it take him speaking for people to actually listen? We could see where some of this is heading. Like he said, people cutting corners, that's the scary part.
That's why I've actually for a long time been a strong advocate of AI regulation. So that I think regulation is, it's not fun to be regulated. It's somewhat arduous to be regulated. I have a lot of experience with regulated industries because obviously automotive is highly regulated. You could fill this room with all the regulations that are required for a production car just in the United States, and then there's a whole different set of regulations in Europe and China and the rest of the world. So very familiar with being overseen by a lot of regulators. And the same thing is true with rockets. You can't just willy-nilly shoot rockets off, not big ones anyway. Because the FAA oversees that, and then even to get a launch license, there are probably half a dozen or more federal agencies that need to approve it, plus state agencies. So I've been through so many regulatory situations. It's insane, and sometimes people think I'm some sort of like regulatory maverick that sort of defies regulators on a regular basis, but this is actually not the case. Once in a blue moon, rarely I will disagree with regulators, but the vast majority of the time, my companies agree with the regulations and comply. Anyway, so I think we should take this seriously, and we should have a regulatory agency. I think it needs to start with a group that initially seeks insight into AI, then solicits opinion from industry, and then has proposed rulemaking, and then those rules, will probably, hopefully, grudgingly be accepted by the major players in AI, and I think we'll have a better chance of advanced AI being beneficial to humanity in that circumstance.
But all regulations start with a perceived danger. Planes fall out of the sky, or food causes botulism.
Yes.
I don't think the average person playing with AI on his iPhone perceives any danger. Can you just roughly explain what you think the dangers might be?
Yeah. So the danger, really, AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of a civilizational destruction. There's movies like Terminator, but it wouldn't quite happen like Terminator, because the intelligence would be in the data centers.
Right.
The robot's just the end.
It's still a great comparison. I wasn't even thinking about Terminator, but that would be a great comparison when you think about it, because all I keep thinking about in my head is AI once looking at some point looking at us and saying we're harming the planet, or we're a destruction to something that they deem sacred, and then them turning on us and saying in order for them to say what it is they deem sacred, they got to wipe us out. That's the issue I see happening. You know what I mean?
Because the intelligence would be in the data centers.
Right.
The robot's just the end effector. But I think perhaps what you may be alluding to here is that regulations are really only put into effect after something terrible has happened.
That's correct.
If that's the case for AI,
too late.
we're only putting regulations after something terrible has happened.
It's too
it may
late.
be too late to actually put the
Exactly.
regulations in place. The AI may be in control at that point.
You think that's
not
real?
good.
It is conceivable that AI could take control and reach a point where you couldn't turn it off, and it would be making
Yes.
the decisions for people.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Easily.
Absolutely.
No, that's definitely where things are headed, for sure. I mean, the things like say ChatGPT, which is based on GPT-4 from OpenAI, which is a company that I played a critical role in creating, unfortunately.
Back when it was a nonprofit.
Yes. I mean, the reason OpenAI exists at all is that Larry Page and I used to be close friends, and I would stay at his house in Palo Alto, and I would talk to him late into the night about AI safety. And at least my perception was that Larry was not taking AI safety seriously enough.
What did he say about it?
He really seemed to be one sort of digital superintelligence, basically digital God, if you will, as soon as possible.
He wanted that?
Yes. He's made many public statements over the years that the whole goal of Google is what's called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, or Artificial Superintelligence. You know, and I agree with him that there's great potential for good, but there's also potential for bad. And so if you've got some radical new technology, you want to try to take a set of actions that maximize the probability that it will do good and minimize the probability it will do bad things.
Yes.
It can't just be hell for leather. It's just go, barreling forward and, hope for the best. And then at one point, I said, well, what about, we're going to make sure humanity's okay here. And then he called me a speciesist.
Did he use that term?
Yes. And there were witnesses. I wasn't the only one there when he called me a speciesist. And so I was like, okay, that's it. Yes, I'm a speciesist. Okay. You got me. What are you? Yeah, I'm fully a speciesist. Busted. So that was the last straw. At the time, Google had acquired DeepMind, and so Google and DeepMind together had about 3/4 of all the AI talent in the world. They obviously had a tremendous amount of money and more computers than anyone else. So I'm like, okay, we have a unipolar world here, where there's just one company that has close to a monopoly on AI talent and computers, like scaled computing. And the person who's in charge doesn't seem to care about safety. This is not good. So then I thought, what's the furthest thing from Google would be like a nonprofit that is fully open, because Google was closed for profit. So that's why the open in OpenAI refers to open source, transparency, so people know what's going on.
Yes.
And that
I feel like we need to go on defense right now. Right here, right now, we need to start going on defense. What do I mean by defense? Well, they're on offense right now with creating all this AI, all this intelligent AI. They're on offense and just creating it. They don't care how it ends up or if it could turn on us or how their intelligence may evolve over long periods of time and what that means for us. We need to start building AI to combat that in the case that it does go wrong. We need AI in a defensive manner that will protect us. Solely its job is to protect us, and we can control it. We need that.
We don't want it to have like while I'm normally in favor of for profit, we don't want this to be sort of a profit maximizing demon from hell.
That's right.
That just never stops.
Right.
So that's how OpenAI would.
So you want speciesist incentives here, incentives that.
Yes,
like,
I think we want pro-human.
Yeah.
Let's make the future good for the humans.
Yes.
Yes, because we're humans.
So can you just put it? I keep pressing you, but just for people who haven't thought this through and aren't familiar with it, and the cool parts of artificial intelligence are so obvious. Write your college paper for you, write a limerick about yourself.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot there that's fun and useful. But can you be more precise about what's potentially...
And that's the surface part of it. You got to dig deeper.
and useful. But can you be more precise about what's potentially dangerous and scary? Like, what could it do? What specifically are you worried about?
Going with old sayings, the pen is mightier than the sword. If you have a super intelligent AI that is capable of writing incredibly well and in a way that is very influential, convincing, and is constantly figuring out what is more convincing to people over time, and then enter social media, for example, Twitter, but also Facebook and others, and potentially manipulates public opinion in a way that is very bad. How would we even know?
Ooh.
How do we even know?
Ooh. Ooh. How would we even know? This is getting scary, y'all. There's a lot more of this conversation that takes place we're going to get into, man. But this is just some more thoughts on this whole AI thing, man. We got to be prepared. Got to get prepared, fam. Robots are coming. Y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think, man. And stick around and stay tuned. Till next one, I'm gone. Peace.